All right, well, welcome. I'm Dan Cunningham. This is essentially part two of the Fiskars Tool School when it comes to paper crafting tools. This is all about knives, so crafting knives. We're planning on spending about 25 minutes talking about the variety of knives that Fiskars has for paper and other types of crafting. We'll go through each one of those kind of in an individual basis because there's not that many, but each one of them is unique. They have different qualities, and we'll be able to highlight those and tell you when those tools might be best used for which projects. Along the way, if you have questions, feel free and enter them into the chat. My coworker Holly is in there and is going to be fielding some of those questions. If there's a question that she might throw to me, we might save that towards the end. So at the end, we'll have plenty of time to ask me questions, and I'll go through and answer those as best I can. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. We know that knives are pretty commonly used for cutting paper and wood and other types of crafts. And they are because they are just a single straight blade that can be very easy to use to cut, and often they're very sharp. And the results can really be stunning. Some artists can take a single craft knife and carve a single piece of paper into a really intricate. Here's an example of a very, very elaborate heart, but not much larger than the size of your hand. But on the other extreme, you can use those same types of craft knives to cut things like wood, balsa wood, and making larger, more structural types of crafts. In general, though, there's a very big difference between the knife that you might use to cut out this heart and the knife to cut wood. And I like to put it on a spectrum of when you need tight or a lot of control over it versus when you need a lot of power. So with that being in mind, I'm going to throw up here the 6 main SKUs of knives that Fiskars carries. And they're in order from control on your left to power on your right. And I'll get into detail of kind of what that means, what control truly means, all the way up to what is power. Why is that required? So starting on the far left, we have what's called the fingertip swivel detail knife. So this looks kind of funny. Why is that shaped like a hook? And the idea behind it is, you can see on the right, you would loop your finger through the hole. So you would loop your finger through that loop and then grip it like a pencil. So this is a precision grip, a tripod grip that you can place over and wrap onto a nice soft area. You can see that in orange, that's kind of squishy. And the end of the tool has what's this swivel knife. So you've seen craft knives before with just very sharp tips. This is a tiny, tiny version of that. But as you can see in that animation, it spins. It swivels freely, and you don't actually have the ability to control the position of that. Like a regular craft knife is rigid and fixed. This one spins freely. And what that allows you to do is do some very intricate controlled cutting. Oh, and I already did this one, but you can do a cut over a very complex shape with just by following the line. So you can follow where the tip of the blade is along. I'm going to do this very rough and quick, but you can see it follows any curve that you move along, and it just drags right behind the path that you're drawing. And then when you're done, that cut I wasn't pushing quite hard enough, but that followed the cut all the way through. So this is a very handy knife for when you are doing very small, intricate cutting, because it gives you a very precise tripod grasp, a very ergonomically controlling grasp, and then being able to follow that path without having to worry about turning your wrist around when you're moving upward and then turning it back when you're moving downward. It's going to follow that path continuously. So this is that fingertip swivel detail knife. Very similarly, moving, we'll say to the right, just a little further out of control. Oh, I forgot to mention that there are replacement blades available for this if needed, but it is a pretty sharp knife. And if you're cutting typical papers and things, or even craft papers, you shouldn't really need to replace them very often. But moving one step to the right, again, we have now it's the fingertip craft knife. So the fingertip craft knife has a very, very similar handle. It's orange colored instead, but the knife that is at the end of that, instead of being a swivel knife, is a traditional craft knife, one that you would normally see. Now, this now different is rigidly attached. So it is in a fixed orientation. It won't swivel, but that allows you to be able to still track and follow around certain curves. So say I were to want to cut out this as a nice circle, or this is a pretty easy one that's just a little circle, but by moving the paper or moving your hand, you still get a significant amount of control with this pinch grip, but you can still make these curving, intricate cuts with just by holding it and moving either the paper. Now, I say that this is a step towards power out of control, because if you were to drag up, you actually have to turn your wrist or turn the paper, because you cannot spin this blade. It's not like the swivel. But what this larger blade can do is now you can cut through things that a swivel blade, which you saw is very small, couldn't cut through. So here's some cork, for instance. Now this piece of cork has no trouble cutting through, because this is a typical craft knife blade. So it's kind of like a hybrid between a regular craft knife, or a craft knife blade with a regular handle, and the fingertip, because it gives you that enhanced control, but it gives you the larger blade in order to be able to cut through that heavier stuff. So again, precision with that power to cut. We do have replacement blades, because this uses a typical blade, a typical craft knife blade. You would loosen it and it comes right out. And so you can see that this is just a typical blade that slides down into the body, and you tighten it in and it's rigidly attached. So that's the fingertip craft knife. Now, taking another step towards more power is the more traditional. Now it looks like a stick. So now this is kind of what you're used to. But the easy blade change knives have a couple very interesting features. So the first thing that I like to point out is this is not a round shape. So if I flip over to here, you can see there's a ridge along a couple of these edges. And why would what is traditionally felt as a rounded area, why would that be this shape? And it turns out when you hold a tripod grip, you typically have 2 fingers underneath and 1 on top. So a round tool would be able to spin within that grip easier than one that has a shape like that. So this is a teardrop type shape, but it really conforms to that tripod pinch grip that you would use for more control. So now that you've seen kind of the shape of that, you can use it like a traditional craft knife, the one with the stick. But let's say you want to change blades. This orange half looks like it's got some features going on up here, and that's that easy quick change. If you pull back on it and slide it down, now this blade is loose. And so this blade can be removed and replaced, and you just snap it right back in place. And once again, now it's rigidly attached, just like any other craft knife that you've used that you would tighten down on. So this is an easy blade change, which allows you to replace worn out blades. Or alternatively, you can buy, at Michael's, you can buy a full kit that includes several different blades as well as several different blade types. So this is that same easy change blade, but if you didn't want the traditional blade called a number 11 blade, and you wanted more of a carving blade or a hybrid, the hybrid, this is almost a drag knife, but it doesn't rotate, but it's just a smaller, thinner blade. You could place it in very quickly and deploy it, and now it's ready to go as well. There's no unscrewing or anything like that. This just kind of can give you that ability to change blades very quickly. So this set, these are standard blades. Their number 11 is your typical craft knife, but then we have number 10, number 16, number 17. You don't really need to know the numbers very well, but those are more like a scalpel blade, which has a curved cutting edge instead of a straight cutting edge, as well as a push cutting blade. So this is a blade that's more of a chisel. So it could be used for carving. It could be used for more control for downward cutting. So if I were to say use this chisel type blade, then if you wanted to cut straight corners or something very, very straight up and down, that could be your pushing down rather than doing a drag. So more that chisel type of action. And this kit then has a blade guard that you can engage and then store this in here. It closes up quite nicely with a magnet on the side to hold your blades in place. the whole time, so they don't move. And then I flipped it over. So that's a handy case that it comes in. That's the Easy Blade Change knives. You saw it's kind of a traditional single stick handle, but with the ability to change the blades rapidly, as well as having a very ergonomically tuned shape. Move towards the next side, and yeah, there's the optional blades. This is now what many people consider the traditional knife, traditional craft knife. It is a metal, full metal handle that is typically very round. It's very robust. It's kind of heavy in your hand so that you can feel the weight of it. You would have the craft knife attached in the end, which by unscrewing it, you can remove one and put in another. And then this also includes this soft grip area at the front. And that's so that when you are holding it with that pinch grip, it doesn't spin within your hand. So this tool is a very kind of traditional looking thing. We've got a few extra little additions on it. And like the Easy Blade Change, you can use the small blade variety, kind of the chisel that you saw, as well as the more scalpel shapes. Those all fit within this handle as well. And you can purchase the small blade assortment online. I believe it's online on Michael's, but you can also get them separately. You can get them elsewhere. You can even interchange them with if you have the Easy Blade Change one. Those are all a possibility. Now, if you wanted to go kind of even a little more heavy duty, you may be sacrificing a little bit of that precision and control, but the next step up we call the heavy duty Easy Change detail knife. And so this knife is sized a little larger. So the handle is a little fatter. It does still have soft grip at the front, so you can do a pretty reasonable pinch grip. It's got a flat face on one side so that you can engage with that finger and still have a pretty decent pinch grip. But most of the time when you're doing heavy duty cutting, you're going to be doing a grip that's a modified pinch. So now it's a full hand pinch. So this grip, like I showed here, is a full hand grip. And that's where now you can press down with a lot more force and cut through heavier materials, multiple layers of materials. This is a chipboard, chipboard or a corrugated cardboard that you can push down and make very stronger cuts while maintaining quite a bit of that precision that you've had with a detail knife. Now, for the Easy Blade Change, this is a flip down. Once that's flipped down, these are loose. At the same time, the difference in the blades is really only apparent when you start to compare them. So this is a traditional craft knife blade. Again, the number 11 that was in the other Easy Blade Change. This is the heavy duty. The bottom piece that attaches is wider. So that actually means that these larger heavy duty blades are not interchangeable with the small ones, but just like the regular, there are a variety of blade sizes. So that you should see that the traditional, what you would consider this blade is a number 5, and then there's number 18, 19, 22, 15. There's a variety of different things. But because it's this heavier duty handle, you can now do more things than just cut with a knife. So you can get saw blades, whether they're a fine tooth saw or a little rougher saw, that fit within this handle. So in the same way that the Easy Blade Change works for the rest of them, it's very similar here. Once you've got that blade in there, you clamp down on it, and now you have a little mini saw. So this heavy duty blade, this heavy duty handle with the heavy duty blades, does more than just cutting paper. Now you really could start looking at cutting thinner woods, balsa woods, things that are going to offer more resistance to a regular knife that might take a couple passes. You might be better off using something like a small saw. Now, putting it in this handle still gives you lots of control because you've got a full wraparound grip. You have the Easy Blade Change that's still active for all of these. And you still have the option to use a traditional craft knife. These traditional craft knives are still part of the kit most of the time. So it's kind of like a great additional tool. Like if you already have a craft knife, this heavy duty version of the craft knife might be something else that you want to look at. Now, finally, when you've got to do a lot of heavy duty cutting, things like cutting multiple layers of paper or heavier boards, you might actually look at something that would not be at the top of mind when you think about a craft knife. Is rotary cutters are much more traditionally used in fabric quilting. The traditional rotary cutter is going to be in the quilting aisle. This is the same technology, but it is intended for paper. It's a paper edger in this case. So this type of blade is, if you watched the last week's, you're familiar with this. It is a razor sharp pizza cutter in a way. It's a blade that has sharpened edge all the way around the circle. And then when you press it down and roll it across the material that you're cutting, it's going to cut right through. Typically, that's used for cutting straight lines, but it doesn't have to be. You can go around curves with this rotary paper edger. It has no problems doing that if it's not too tight of a curve. But if you're going to use straighter lines, you do have to use a ruler of some kind that you would cut up against, whether that is a ruler intended for paper crafting, doesn't have to be, but it can be, or one intended for quilting. Either one would work. They're both going to give you measurements, and they're both a nice straight edge for you to cut against. So this is a rotary paper edger is a tool that you might not think about for paper crafting and paper cutting, but it's a great tool to have in the arsenal. When it comes to safety, I mentioned it's got a razor sharp blade. It does have a blade guard that you would pull away. You can kind of see it retracts down inside the body to expose the blade edge. So it can stay safe when it's in your drawer, when you've got it sitting on the kitchen table when you're doing a craft. Those are kind of a handy thing to do. The mats and the rulers often come in a variety of sizes. I know Michaels carries the 12 by 12 ruler mat that looks like that. The ruler, for instance, this gold toned ruler is carried at Michaels as well. So for those straightest cuts, that's what we recommend. Now, I've talked a lot about different kinds of blades, but I just wanted a one-pager that shows that there is 3 of the SKUs that we talked about, 3 of the products hold the standard size blades. You would call those number 11 or just craft knife. That's the regular fingertip, the easy blade change, and then the standard craft knife. Those all fit a number 11 blade. Whereas the heavy duty handle, that fits that number 2 blade. That is a larger bottom and a slightly longer blade, but otherwise looks very similar to the number 11. And then both of those types have a variety of specialty blades that you can get kits or separately. Or if you go to Michael's website, both kits are available. There is actually a kit for the heavy duty as well that includes a variety of those knife, chisel type blades, as well as some saws, including a large one, which I didn't show, but it is just a fine-toothed large saw. And this one is especially good for shaping balsa wood. And all of those things fit within a magnetized case, which closes up and stores very nicely together. You know, they store in your drawer, kind of amongst all the rest of your tools, and the pieces aren't loose or coming out. You know, actually the stuff is all in here. So those are pretty handy little boxes to have around as well. Now, there is one final product that I didn't really fit within that because it doesn't really fit within the control versus power spectrum that I kind of based this presentation on. But we do, and Michaels carries a circle cutter. So this is just called the circle cutter. It's a Fiskars tool that's actually been around for quite a while. And it's great for cutting pretty precise, exact circles out of craft paper. And that's great for scrapbooking. That's been the traditional paper craft that this has been used for, but it could be used for other things. Like if you want to cut out a perfect circle for putting in a button, if you're making buttons, like kind of the badge buttons that you would wear on your clothing, this is a great tool to do that. The concept behind it is you would set it over the center of what you're doing. You push down on a squishy foam center axis or an axle, and then you would slide the blade. You can see it's the orange part around the circle at whatever distance you have set it at, and it makes a nice perfect cut circle for you to use it. So that's a handy tool for you to cut a very specific task cutting exact circles, but it does a great job at that. So finally, I kind of want to leave a picture of the Michaels paper crafting area. And I want to put 2 arrows on there to point out exactly where those craft knives are located. If you were with us last week, you saw quite a bit of the paper trimmers, as well as the scissors, which the scissors are above and the paper trimmers are below. These knives are mostly in the middle, and you can kind of see there are the kits that you can see for the regular easy blade change, as well as some of these varieties of the blades that you can buy. And then you can see the heavy duty knives, the easy blade change individually, the regular craft knives, and then the pair of fingertip knives, all present right there, right at eye level, easy for you to kind of investigate and figure out. And hopefully kind of the idea behind this presentation was to inform you on what the technical aspects behind each of those products are, which will help you make a decision when you go to the shelf next, when you're going to do a new project or you're looking to expand your collection of craft tools. Hopefully this will be able to help you decide what might be the next best step. So with that, little short and sweet presentation, but I do have some time for questions. Before we begin, I have a note on last week's question and answer. One of the questions was, is there a scoring blade available for our paper trimmers? And off the top of my head, I believed there was. We had one of my coworkers was not really sure that was the case. We did go online, and that is available on Michael's website. It's an online only purchase, but it is called the triple track blade set. It's got a scoring blade and a regular blade, and those fit within that one of the style I paper trimmer that is available at Michael's. So the answer to last week, we were not positive, but the answer is for sure yes. So thank you. Opening for questions.
No, none so far. I did drop a link into the chat for everyone regarding the blade that he just discussed.
Okay,
and
great.
We do actually have a question that popped in. Regarding the circle cutter, what is the smallest and biggest circle it can cut?
That's a great question. I don't have it off the top of my head, and I actually don't have the package with me.
I can look it up quick.
Yeah. That seems like something I should have known beforehand.
All right. It cuts from 1 to 8 inches in diameter.
Okay. That feels about right. Yeah, it doesn't, because of the mechanism inside, you can't get down any smaller than 1 inch. And you can only get as long as the arm that extends that blade out. But that 1 to 8 inch does have increment markings on the side so that you can line up to exactly, say, 1 1/4 inches or 2 3/8 inches. And you can put that, mark it, and then trace the full circle, and you get that accurate size. It does not pierce the center of the circle. I know other types of circle type cutters, or if you think about a compass, that you would put a pointy end into the center of the circle and draw a circle. That does not happen with this because we have a squishy foot that sits down on top. So it's great if you have a photograph that you wanted to cut and not stab the middle of. That squishy foot just kind of sets right in the center, and then the whole mechanism rotates around that foot.
Awesome. Anyone else have any last questions before Dan departs us for the day? If not, Dan, do you want to give a quick just plug for next week's class?
Yes, I was going to say that next Friday, same time, we have a presentation on other fun paper crafting tools. There's a couple more tools that are specialty that you can use that are sold at Michael's that you can use to do different kinds of crafts. They're often, most of them are new and exciting, and so they're worth talking about individually. So check back for those types of things next week at the same time. So thank you very much again. If there are any additional questions that you come up with, if you want to stop back next week, you're happy to address them at that point. But otherwise, thank you for attending, and have a great weekend.